I think Taj already sort of touched on what I wanted to say. It
Okay.
was mostly around, I think it was to answer the question. I think it was you who asked when you said, when did it become a thing for people to care for like streaming money to be that important? Where
Yeah.
that's what we're all talking about. And yeah, the answer that I was gonna give was similar to what Taj said, which is like when everybody's trying to recoup and you're checking your back end and you're seeing that it's just not making sense, right? It's like you're seeing the number of streams going up, but your revenue is not going up,
Right.
and you are doing well in quotes, but you're not doing well financially. You're doing well in terms of volumes, um, and so you now start to look at, oh, but I got only a few streams from this other country, but the money is translating to is more than all the money I got from Nigeria. Then you start asking yourself, why am I even promoting in Nigeria? Like, what's the ROI on that?
Right.
And then it has now become a thing. What markets your music is being streamed at? I think even in terms of, if you look at it from the perspective of a distributor, people are now more inclined to sign people with certain kinds of sounds.
Eh, Thank you. Thank you. We're going to get into that
Yeah,
because I find it
yeah,
so critical in this conversation, the style of music you make.
yeah. It's beginning to become a thing. Like I've heard
Yeah.
so many interesting things from like execs, like around how they rate the Nigerian market, around sound and scalability of the sound. And so, from a commercial point of view, like from just a purely digital streaming perspective, it makes more sense to sign an artist whose music can scale outside of Nigeria, even if no one knows them in Nigeria,
Right.
than an artist that is they are playing their music everywhere in Nigeria, but like there's very little potential for that music to scale outside of Nigeria.
Right.
So, but if you're, and this is a conversation that we have all the time, and so Taj and I have talked about this 1 million times. If you're in management, if you're looking at an artist's career from a 360 point of view,
Yeah.
you might not care that much about just streaming because you know that if they, even if they pop in Nigeria, you can always use that to tap into like Nigerian diaspora in the UK,
Right.
in the US, and slowly get in, which is what you see with like a Kumi or a famous Pluto and all these guys that are now trying
Fido.
to
Yeah.
tour in quotes. But if you're a distributor, you know you're not your revenue is only streaming.
Yeah.
Like so you don't care about waiting to first of all build that local popularity and then using it to make money from shows abroad because you are not getting any upside on show money anyway. So if you're signed to me if I'm a
Distributor.
distributor
Yeah.
and you're signed to me as a distributor, even if you have a viral song in Nigeria, yeah, cool, good for you, and they've booked you to come and play in London. That has very little impact on. I mean, the impact is indirect. So maybe people Shazam the song and then people in London start streaming it. But in the real sense, as a distributor, for me, I only make my money from streams. So I'm not really concerned about your success with
Right.
shows or with touring or whatever because it doesn't affect me. And those are the real dynamics that are going on in the industry that is now affecting the kind of music people make. And like someone rightly said, the volume of music people are putting out as well. And like the kinds of people that execs are signing now. Because when they first want to sign you, first thing is they're going to check your IG page. We all do this. Like, what do their aesthetics look like? Like, okay, if we work with this person within a 1 year time frame, what's the Europe potential of this music? Like, send this thing to DJs in Europe, would they fuck with it?
Yeah.
Those are now really deeply considered by anyone who is signing artists today,
Yeah.
unfortunately, especially the distro side.
I
Yeah.
have a question.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
a question, sorry. So I agree on the transferability to Europe, America, all of that. But my question has to do with the focus on volume. I fear that, and I hear Taj when he says the whole thing about, okay, like Dappa is a great example of dropping more music and higher volume to keep up with everything, right? But is it is it an efficient method long term? I don't think volume necessarily
Bro, it sounds like the only prescription.
Yeah,
I feel like it's the only
it-
one that they're
and,
using.
and
I
that's
don't
why
know that it's the
yeah.
full one.
No,
I don't
but
think it's
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Taj, real quick.
the harsh reality is that you can feel how you feel about it, right? But the people that are investing this money, they know where it's paying them, right?
Right.
Like at the end of the day, it is clearly the only thing that makes sense, like
Okay.
on a like that can be replicated. Like you
Okay.
can replicate volume. Like the truth is that there's Asake that has become a phenomenon, right? How can we create Asake 10 times? Nope, we cannot. In fact, only one man can. And even I don't think he will struggle to do it 2 more times, right? Like only he and maybe Jazzy can recreate an Asake, and they will go through 4 or 5 times before they make another one like that, right? So it's very much like the volume is. It seems like the only thing that can be replicated, because once again, with volume, you have your like you're placing more chips on the table. One will work,
Yeah.
right? One will work, and one will cover up for
Also,
the expense of like the remaining 15 or 25.
it's worth
Right.
noting that sometimes even with these deals, you're not like it's not your label or your distro that's mandating you to drop 1 million albums. It's usually a minimum requirement. So if you
Okay.
sign a deal and minimum requirement is, oh, you are giving me this money, I have to drop 20 songs in 1 year minimum. You can drop the 20 and be chilling for forever to recoup, or you can drop 80 and increase your time 4 times. You can shorten your recruitment time by 4 times by dropping 4 times the amount of music. Like they're not gonna say, "Oh, you have to drop 1 million songs." They can say you have to drop a minimum of 20 songs, but then you're locked in this deal for 2 years.
Right.
And if you want to get out of the deal faster, maybe the deal something reverts to you once you recoup, and so it's on you now. After you've dropped the 20, you've met the minimum requirements. You can say, "Omo, I don't want to wait to naturally recoup. Let me drop 2 more albums. Let me just give them." And that's why the quality of the music is not great. And I feel like those are the dots that are not connected.
now
Dolakwa, wait, real quick.
Dolakwa is speaking to what I'm
Real quick,
asking.
Belema, real quick.
Situation we find ourselves though.
Real quick, and that's the thing. I think we've come to a conclusion in some sense, because when this conversation has been happening, and I even put out a tweet about the very subliminal messaging around the conversation, because all it says right now, especially to young artists that are listening, that are observing the conversation about how the Nigerian market is feeding them versus the rest of the world, I'm thinking, again, I'm not in the actual business of music. I'm not making money from music. I'm speaking from a consumer perspective, right? When I'm saying this messaging or this conversation, again, it's a sad reality, but it's dangerously having a message to young artists to not favor or not to speak to their cultural value, for instance, right? Like you're Nigerian, you have a certain uniqueness about you, about being Nigeria, and it's to shine in your music, it's to show your music. My fear now is younger artists listening to this conversation about how Nigeria doesn't feed them streaming wise, and see that, in Sweden now, for instance, you're going to make the best result out of targeting that market. So will a TML Vibes, for instance, or will a Baloranking, for instance, now have to shape-shift their music or shape-shift their identity or try and reinvent themselves in order to fit a certain market? And that's why I feel like the subscription or the prescription to the illness now it's only sounding like a volume game at the end of the day. I think the volume game now seems like the only way that they can retain that some of a cultural essence, and still somewhat eat out of it. And I just fear that, and he even said it, Donna One even said it in that conversation too. He said it was so important that she was speaking in English. And my brother, and I don't want to sound very Pan-African and put on a very like, I don't know, like a freaking Hotep hat on and say like but this is another level of like of us having to dilute ourselves, dilute our essence for for a quick buck, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we're here, but that's why I feel like there's a danger in the conversation where we need to find prescriptions to those guys that cannot change themselves, that cannot speak English or make a record like Thames. You know what I mean? So I feel like, what's the prescription, or what's the advice, or what's the messaging to those guys that want to be authentic to themselves, to their Nigerianness, to their culture? What's the prescription? And no one's bringing prescription other than volume. Other than the volume getting forward for them, right?
Dolapo answered my question specifically when he said the volume affects the quality, right? And that's what that's where I have a problem, because there are so many parts to it, right? So I hear, okay, I do not want to dilute myself. So if I'm not going to dilute, then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make more. But then the problem comes when I start making more music, and then I fall into this thing where my music is now the one essentially funding other artists' projects. And so you find yourself in this situation where you're the one star artist in your label and everybody else is essentially depending on you. That is where you have the situations where people are very eager to leave very fast, right? Because now all of a sudden I've done my part. I've made everybody money. And my money is now the one that is sustaining the label. God, I beg. These are the issues.
Can I go?
Yes.